President Donald Trump has warned Iran against laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz and threatened to blow up any ship attempting to do so. The U.S. Central Command says multiple Iranian naval vessels have now been eliminated, including 16 mine layers near Hormuz. For more, Bloomberg's Joumanna Bercetche joins me in Dubai. Talk to us about the confusion over the status of mines in the Strait and how many may have been there already, Joumanna.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the word confusion, Ivani, and this is in reference to a post that President Trump put up overnight warning the Iranians not to load any mines in the Strait of Hormuz. He then added that there's no sign that they've actually started to do so. And then, of course, a couple of hours later, we found out from Central Command that they had targeted more than a dozen of these mine-carrying vessels that were about to transit through the Strait of Hormuz, in anticipation of them actually laying the groundwork for these mines to go off. And so what has happened here is a new maritime front has opened up in this war. Central Command now going after any of the vessels with mine-laying capabilities. Unclear at this point exactly how much stockpile of mines that Iran are sitting on. We were speaking to Becca Wasser, our Bloomberg defense lead, and she was saying even before the war started, they were estimated to be sitting on around 5,000 mines. But ultimately, it's not operationally difficult for them to load some of these ships with the mines and with the explosives. So that's going to be one issue to contend with, even though the U.S. are committing to send over special forces to help remove the mines that have already been placed in the Strait, assuming that they are there. The other point is there are other ways that Iran can also cause disruption throughout the Strait of Hormuz, and some of them include interfering with GPS, with what people are calling spoofing, so sending wrong GPS signals to ships looking to transit. And so there are other ways as well that they could also seek to impact the safe passage of vessels going through the Strait, which is why effectively it still remains shut. And we've talked about the massive ramifications that that is having on energy markets, but it's very clear now that from Trump's perspective, they're going to try to do whatever it takes to reopen the Strait. But whether it's going to lead to the actual effective safety passageway for vessels and tankers that want to cross is still a big question mark.
And then, Joumanna, it's starting to seem like the US and Israel are potentially now diverging on how to actually end this war, doesn't it?
Well, publicly, they will say no. And I actually had the chance to speak to the former Israeli Prime Minister yesterday, Naftali Bennett. He said the two sides are still aligned on the objectives of what they're trying to achieve here. But I will say that there is one big difference between U.S. and Israel in terms of public appetite for this war. Now, the broad public in Israel is supportive of the steps that the IDF and Israel have taken. In the U.S., you're beginning to see more and more public backlash against President Trump, especially with so much scrutiny over the price of oil and what's been happening there and how that could trickle down to the U.S. consumer heading into the midterm elections. And so clearly, from the perspective of time, President Trump would prefer to see a speedy end to this war. And that also goes back to some of the comments that he made yesterday. And that quote, he thinks the work is mostly complete and that it should take a matter of a couple more days for it to wind up. But actually, if you look at what they've been doing on the ground operationally, the last 24 hours, per the U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, have been their most intense yet. The operations continue. And as you were just speaking about, a new front has opened up from the maritime perspective. At the same time, Iran continues to be defiant and continues to strike back at Israel and at Gulf states. Sirens once again going off in Bahrain this morning. Saudi Arabia intercepting projectiles over here in the UAE. We were awoken in the night with another missile alert coming through. And so Iran continues to fight back and continues to defy the U.S. and continue to say that they are not interested in negotiating at this point in time.